On this episode of Still Loading, A Thief's End. Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Still Loading. I am your host as usual, Josh Koval, and this week we are continuing with our Naughty Dog series, getting close to the end of the Uncharted games. There's actually only 2 left after this, surprisingly enough. Hopefully they'll eventually make more, I doubt, with Nathan Drake, but with me as usual for the Uncharted series is Tristan. Tristan, how are you doing today?
I am doing swell.
Good to hear, good to hear. So I brought you in to continue our series. We've been talking about all the Naughty Dog games thus far, specifically in the Uncharted ones. Eventually I will be moving on to the Crash Bandicoot. The Crash Bandicoot. That makes it sound like I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
The YouTube.
You know, I'm going to talk about the Bandicoot named Crash at some point. But no, we will be talking about the Crash Bandicoot series. At least me, obviously. I don't know if you would like to join that one as well.
Sure, man.
So let's dive into this one. So Uncharted 4 was Nathan Drake's final Uncharted game appearance. He will not be the final appearance of him on this podcast because we still have to do Uncharted Golden Abyss at some point, the PS Vita exclusive. But this was the send-off for Nathan Drake as a character because he's been adventuring for quite some time now. And that it very much felt like that. I remember leading up to this, there was not a lot of drama, but there was a little bit of chaos in the development leading up to this game because Amy Hennig, the creator of the series, left Naughty Dog early in this game's development. I believe in 2012, shortly after, like a year after Uncharted 3 launched, right?
Okay. I thought that they had done a fair amount of work into Uncharted 4, at least story-wise, when she left, because I know they had to... Didn't they have to rewrite the ending or something with Neil Druckmann?
I'm not sure. Okay, actually, they departed in March 2014, not 2012. So It was only 2 years before the game released. So that would make sense that they had already worked a good bit of the plot. But the people who took over, like you mentioned before, were Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann. Those are the directors of the game. Actually, I should also say it came out on May 10th, 2016. So it's already closing in on 4 years old, which is weird to think about.
And they broke there because it was 2007, 2009, 2011 for 1, 2, 3. Although I guess some of that might have been because they're developing for the PS4 for the first time. So
that probably would be it. And apparently this game would have taken a little bit longer had they not developed had they not done the Last of Us definitive edition. What was the PS4 version called?
Yeah, just the
I forget what the actual
definitive might be, right?
Was it definitive edition? Well, the PS4 port of Last of Us. And I was reading online that it helped them out a lot because it gave them, without having to create a whole game from the ground up, they could just focus on the technical aspects of the PS4 when they ported Last of Us to the PS4 from the PS3.
The Last of Us Remastered.
That's what it is. So yeah, and Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann took over for Amy Hennig after she left. I still don't know why she left. Did you hear anything about it? I also haven't dug into it a whole lot, to be fair.
Yeah, I haven't really heard anything further than there was some drama that caused her to leave.
I wonder what it could have been like. I'm trying to see.
Maybe just creative differences and she wanted to do her own thing, or
I guess so.
Because she's over, isn't she one of the EA studios now?
She was, yes, because she joined Visceral Games, which I'm pretty sure, do they even still exist?
No.
Dissolved and merged into EA Vancouver and EA Montreal.
Yeah, they were the ones that did
the
Dead Space.
Dead Space. Man, EA, once again, everything they touch, they ruin it. Look at BioWare.
Yeah, oh, God. Yeah, I think with Visceral, it was a whole deal where they wanted to continue doing single player stories, and EA was like, no, multiplayer is the future. You got to go multiplayer, or people will just trade in the game. And then no more visceral.
Yeah, it's just, I'm glad that they're, but who cares if they trade in the game? You got your money at that point.
Yeah, well,
but I guess they wouldn't sell as many new copies, and that's what makes developers money.
Basically, GameStop killed Visceral with the used game market.
I still say EA killed Visceral because the used game market isn't a bad thing. It's just that and there's always going to be people who want the new versions of stuff. Plus, I think GameStop helped kill the used game market anyway by allowing them to trade in whatever they wanted. So that, like, I don't know about people who are picky like me. I hate the GameStop labeled shit. Like, when you're picking up a used game and you see one of the GameStop printed labels, I'm not going to buy that. I want the artwork for it.
Even I was looking at a Wii game that Emily has. That it was one of the Mario Bros. Whatever's. And it's got a big old GameStop sticker on it. Even though it's a new copy, it specifically says new. I'm just like, why would you do that? That's the worst thing, to have a giant yellow sticker on your, like, brand new. I'm not even that much of a collector. I just like my stuff to look nice,
I also hate when, so you're talking about when you have to get the store, it's when it's the last new copy of the game.
I guess. I don't know. But it was just a big yellow sticker on the actual case.
From GameStop?
Yep.
Usually when that happens, it's because they've run out of all the sealed copies. So when they get a new copy, when they get a new game, they're not given like a special case to put up on the wall. They have to open a sealed copy, and use that as the wall case. And so that's the last one they sell, because they sell all the sealed ones first. But yeah, I'm trying to look into. I just reading up real quick. Apparently, Hennig was forced out by The Last of Us. Us as Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley, and explained that Uncharted may now come under their control. Hennig recently celebrated her 10th anniversary with Naughty Dog, where she served as director and writer on Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. There was never really any talk about it as to why she left, it seems like. Other than that she may have been forced out, which is a shame because she did a lot of great work for Naughty Dog. She worked on the Jack and Daxter series, and she worked on, I don't know about Crash Bandicoot, but she worked on a lot of stuff. She worked at Crystal Dynamics for a short while, which are the people who made the original Tomb Raiders. So she'd been around the industry for quite a while, and she wrote and created the Uncharted series, which is just awesome. So it is weird, but I will say with Uncharted 4, you can clearly see Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley's touch in it. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just a lot more heavy in terms of tone. The tone in which they write is very visceral and very heavy. Especially, I mean, they definitely lightened their tone for Uncharted because it warranted it. But you can tell their Last of Us writing chops were very much at play in this game. And
they definitely pulled in a lot of that kind of environmental storytelling, and like you can find like letters and stuff that are around very Last of Us like. And I think the biggest departure from the first 3 games that Hennig had a lot of hands in is that they kind of departed from that supernatural edge at the end of the games.
Yeah.
Where it's like you've got kind of like weird zombie things, and then you've got what do we call them? Rage Yetis?
Oh yeah, we called them Rage Yetis.
And then, like a genie or something at the end of 3. Yeah. And then it's kind of like, no, there's no scary supernatural thing. It was just pirates that were really greedy.
And reading the plot up again, because we have both beaten this game. It's though you played it through somewhat recently. For me, it's been since it was released almost 4 years ago was the last time I touched it. But I did play up at least the first 5 chapters just as preparation for this, just to kind of get reacquainted with the controls and reacquainted with how the storytelling goes, or how their storytelling tactics. And you're 100% right, man. They tell a lot more of the story through the environment in this game than they have in the previous Uncharted games, by having different things for you to inspect and different things for you to flip over. And they even make that part to encourage you to look at things necessary for part of the story. Early in the game, you are exploring that cell in a Panamanian. I don't know if it's in Panama. Where do you remember where that that jail that they they're in the beginning of the game is located at.
It might have been Panamania.
Is it Panama?
I know they referenced that in Uncharted 2. Because I think that was a Panamanian prison.
Okay, yeah, it is Panamanian. Panamanian, not
the Pandarian, yes.
Mr. Pandaria, right? To access the former cell of Avery's first mate. So, Avery, we have not talked about. We'll go into the story in a second, but the whole premise of this is that Nate and you find out he has a brother named Sam, who you have not heard about up until this point in the series. When they were younger, they were obsessed with finding Henry Avery's famous treasure that was worth millions upon billions of dollars, or however, like it's so much treasure.
It's hard to make the transition from dollars to gold ingots and jewels and whatnot. So.
I don't know how much it actually is worth. Now, what I was thinking about the other day, you always hear, I don't know, because at the end of the game, they kind of have this, but, spoiler alert for the end of the game, Nate survives, which was actually, people were really concerned with that. A lot of people, I remember, leading up to this, thought Nate was going to die in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, spoiler alert for the rest of this episode, just to be on the safe side. It is 4 years old now. It's not like this is a brand new game, but still, for those who have not played it yet, spoiler alert, it was really widely speculated that Nate was going to die during this game, because it was very heavily implied this was the last Uncharted game. And it turns out it wasn't, but it was at least the last one for Nathan Drake.
What was the subtitle for the first Uncharted game?
Drake's Fortune.
Drake's Fortune. Okay. So it's interesting that every game has a subtitle. So you've got Drake's Fortune,
Honor Among Thieves,
Drake's Deception, and then A Thief's End. And every time we think that they're talking about Drake, like Nathan Drake. Right?
Yes.
But you have Drake's Fortune was talking about
Sir Francis
Drake. Honor Among Thieves. I'm not super sure about that one.
I almost feel like that is more of a satire of Harry in the second game, because Harry is a thief and he betrays you. And
right. And then you have Drake's Deception, which I thought like, oh man, what did Nathan keep from everyone? Because there was the whole like thing about his identity that they kind of hinted at the end. But really,
he's not really a descendant of Nathan Drake,
right? Or Francis Drake.
Francis Drake, sorry. He is Nathan Drake.
Right, but the deception they're referring to is Francis Drake's deception to the Queen, right?
Yeah.
So then in Uncharted 4, you think, oh, A Thief's End, Drake's the thief and he must die because it's his end. But really, it's talking about all of the pirates.
Because
those are the real thieves. And like that was kind of their demise by the end of the game.
No, you're right. That's interesting. So that's kind of cool, actually. The fact that the game misguides you right from the beginning, because he has the same name as the explorers that they focus on so much.
Right. So I don't know if that was Naughty Dog trying to throw a curveball, or if it's just everyone's preconceived notion of what the title's supposed to be. But
I guess so. But no, what I was going to say was, I was thinking about this because, like I said, Nate survives at the end, and they actually are able to get a little bit of treasure for themselves afterwards. And I was thinking about this. How do you exchange that?
Yeah.
Where is the nearest treasure to dollars exchange building? So you can, it's not like you can go, you go to a currency exchange and you trade in your euros for dollars. There's not like a treasure exchange.
Yeah.
Do you go to a pawn shop?
You probably go to like a fence or something who can maybe sell it to collectors or something,
or museums, or
because I can't imagine they would want to like melt it down or anything. No, that's like I'm sure you could get more money.
Sell the gold to Fort Knox. I don't. I was thinking about that. I'm like, if you find a shitload of treasure, whether it's pirate treasure or just whatever, like old 1800s, 1700s, 16, whatever hundreds century treasure. Where the fuck do you trade that in?
Yeah.
Like, where do you go with that? And it just started getting me thinking, and I'm like, that would be a pretty funny sketch to see some guy who found treasure, but he can't find any place to actually exchange it. So he just carries a chest full of gold around, but he can't find anywhere to actually bring it, like, trade it in. So he's homeless, living on the street, but he has a chest of gold. Right. I just thought that would be a really funny thing to have, because I don't know, what do you do with it? So anyway, so Drake and his brother are trying to find the treasure of the infamous pirate Henry Avery, who plundered the equivalent of 400 million. They tell you right here during the 1865 Gunsway heist. Now I don't know actually what that is.
And is that $400 million from 1800, or is that $400 million today?
I'm assuming today.
Okay.
It basically, the Gunsway heist was an armed trading ship belonging to the Mughal emperor. I'm not going to try to butcher his name, but it's like Aurangzeb, which along with her escort was captured on September 7th, 1695 by the English pirate Henry Avery en route from present-day Mocha to Yemen and Mocha, Yemen to Surat, India. Present-day Mocha, Yemen, I can't speak, to Surat, India. So basically, it was a pirate who attacked a king's ship and got $400 million worth of treasure. So that's where it all comes from.
So that's a pretty good get,
right? Talk about luck. Well, who knows? But yeah, so they're trying to find that lost treasure, and that's the whole premise of the game. And there is a moment early on that I was talking about before, because we kind of went off not on a tangent, but we kept going down the rabbit hole a little bit further. But we were talking about interactive storytelling with the interactive environments. And when you're finding this, in the first level, when you're in that Panamanian jail, I cannot say that word, and Henry Avery's first mate was jailed in the old portions of the prison that you're in. And, that's your first bit of platforming to kind of give you the feel of the game. You find a note there that you have to inspect. And the only way you can get to the next portion or solve the puzzle is by inspecting the note. And what they usually do is they hold it up to you, like you're holding your phone and you're looking at it, but it's an object. And you can rotate it and flip it over and do things like that. And in this one, it's a sheet of paper, and you actually have to fold it so that way you can see what the correct symbol is that you're supposed to check or like look into. Mm-hmm. So, to get back, 5 minutes ago or whatever to what you were saying, yeah, they really added a lot of interactive storytelling, and they encouraged you to do it. They encourage you to check everything, because early in the game there is something for you. There is something that is required for you to complete a certain puzzle early on in the game. So the rest of the game, I should really pay attention to this stuff, because there's going to be interesting tidbits of information as you go through.
Can I go off on a tangent related to this? So I really liked this type of thing in The Last of Us, right? Where it's like you're kind of scavenging through drawers or whatever, looking for ammo or drugs or something to help you survive and make shivs out of or whatever. And it really worked super well there. And I still think it works well here. What I don't like is how big and open all of the explorable areas are, where they are also incorporating that type of thing. Because in the first 3 games, I loved tracking down all the treasures. And it was so cool, where you're going through a linear area and there's a secret little crack or crevice or something you can slip through, and then there's a treasure. That was super fun. It is agony finding these treasures in this game, because they're so spread out and you have to check everywhere.
And there's big, like you said, big open area. And I'm pretty sure, especially shortly into the game, don't you have to drive a Jeep through a big open area, right?
Yeah, in Madagascar.
Yeah.
And that's mostly the part that I'm like, oh god, this is the worst. And so far I haven't looked any up online or anything, but I think that they were actually pretty cool about it in that area, where there's huge areas where there's no points of interest, And I'm pretty sure they didn't hide treasures there, which is like, thank God, because I thought they did my first playthrough, and I was like, this is bullshit. I hate this. Where they're actually hiding them more in like oh, there's a shed over there that might have like a little, like a note or something that you can find that tells you like, oh, in the 1600s or whatever, this shed was for a porta potty or something. But then there'll be like a treasure there. So it's reeling it back a little bit. I guess they didn't do too bad a job with that, but going into it the first time, not realizing that and just being like, how the hell am I supposed to find all these treasures?
Did you actually spend time and explore a lot of those areas really thoroughly?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I did. And it is like, you're on that Jeep and you're going through, there's like, I don't know what kind of tree they are. It's like a Lion King type tree out in the desert. And it's just like, you're going through this oasis area and you're like getting out and looking behind rocks and this, and it's just like, actually, that was just a really nice little set piece that you can drive through. Like, you're not supposed to get out and look at all that stuff. But
you did.
I wasted a lot of time thinking that there was treasures out there.
That's very much like what you would do as a kid, though, if you think about it. Because as a little kid, you would just... If you're playing this game as a kid, I mean, you don't... I've said this so many times before in the podcast, but as an adult, since we have so much less time to play games, we want to feel consistent progress all the time. And you don't really stop to, at least I don't know about you, but I don't really stop to smell the roses in games that I play. I'm always having a goal or an objective, and it's not just a game for me to just go around and explore and just enjoy the world. Hell, in the last game that I even felt like that's something I would want to do was Breath of the Wild, and I still didn't do it with that. I remember you used to explore a lot when you played Skyrim. You would just kind of go around and explore stuff. But I think that world had a lot of things to like check out, right?
Yeah, between like Skyrim and Fallout 3, that was like, I loved just trying to, I think at one point in Fallout 3, you can unlock something that shows you where everything is on the map. And it'll say like if you've been there or not. And that was like, oh, awesome. Now I can check out all these like random caves that may or not even have anything in there, but it's still cool to find them.
That was in Skyrim?
That was in Fallout 3.
Fallout 3, okay. Yeah. But no, so games that's cool because that's a game that rewards you for exploration. Then, for me, it's just that's not a big selling factor for me in a game. So when I play games, I always want to see constant progress. So I never really get the chance, or I should say, I never really take the chance to stop and smell the roses and just kind of explore literally the artistry that goes into making these amazing worlds. Even in 2D games where there's a lot less time, it's a lot less work to put into making it's still a lot of work to make a 2D game. I'm not trying to sell it short, but you know, the amount of people that work in a single AAA title now is just fucking insane. It's longer than a movie, roll, like the credit rolls longer than a movie's credit rolls because there's just so many people involved. And a lot of it's usually from the marketing for other countries, but still, it's a lot. But I never really stopped to kind of smell the roses in this. And this game definitely deserves it, though. Like there is a lot. It is a beautiful looking game. Uncharted 4, just replaying it. I think the thing I've noticed with PS4 the most so far is that there is not a huge difference between early and late and PS4. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot more consistent than if you look at like an early, like look at Resistance versus Resistance 3 on
look
PS3.
Look at Uncharted 1 versus Uncharted 3. Or sorry, Uncharted 1 versus Last of Us.
Yeah.
Last of Us, if that alone, you could probably, if there was a bigger difference between early PS4 and late PS4, Last of Us could be an early PS4 like level caliber in terms of how good the graphics in that game are. That game has insanely good graphics. We still have to do Last of Us as well for the Naughty Dog series.
You know what? That was the remastered version was on PS Plus a couple months ago.
Don't have PS Plus.
Well, I picked it up so I can play it through on PS4.
Don't you have the physical copy of it already
for PS3?
I thought you got The Last of Us remastered on PS, like the physical copy of it on PS4.
No, I think I had planned on it, but never ended up doing it.
Fair enough. So, that's actually, I mean, that's a very long-winded intro without even talking about let's continue on with the gameplay then, because we already kind of talked about how they use interactive storytelling, and which is very much part of the gameplay. I will say they did add some new platforming elements into this game, the grapple hook, and what else? Isn't there like one other thing that you get? I think
the little like wall climbing.
Yes, which is very much taken straight out of the new Tomb Raiders.
Yeah. Okay, so here was another thing for me that was a big departure from the original trilogy. When you make it so like large and non-linear, it gives you a lot of really interesting kind of like sandboxy elements for combat. So you run into, there's a specific spot in Madagascar where you have to like, there's like a bunch of guys in a tower, and there's like some grass that you can hide in, and you can do your stealth elements and stuff, but you can also use that grapple hook to like swing off a tree and like get a lot farther than if you were just kind of running. And maybe you want to use your little rock climbing thing, although I guess you get that pretty late in the game. But there's a lot of those kind of sandbox areas where you just really have to find your own way and kind of maneuver with the new tools they've given you.
Yeah.
And while I think that's super cool, as someone who played through the first 3 games like so many times, and I just like love that kind of like the stealth in the original games, I always viewed as like a puzzle where there's like particular ways that you can get around the patrol routes. And whatever, and it was always super cool once you figured that out. And this one, it's a lot more random and more like realistic, where maybe you slid down something and the bad guys heard a bunch of rocks slide, and now like their patrol timing is all off now, so like I couldn't play through it the same way. And I guess it's hypocritical of me to say that I don't like that, because
it went for a realistic approach. It makes it more dynamic in that sense.
Right, but because I'll go and play in a Tomb Raider game where they're doing that kind of stuff, and I love it. And I'm like, this is amazing. What a great game. But I think I'm so entrenched in those, like, this is an Uncharted game, so it needs to be like the Uncharted games that I've played before. That kind of thing. So that was...
I get you.
These are just like these little stumbling blocks that I kind of hit as I started playing this game for the first time, where... Looking back at it now, it's such a good game. But when I had first played through it, I enjoyed the story, but like a lot of the gameplay, I was like, nah, Uncharted 2 and 3 are still better.
I think actually what I like the most about 4 is the gameplay. The storyline is it's a tie, honestly, because the story is also really good. But I think Uncharted 4's gameplay is the best in the series, in my opinion. Now I like replaying it. It just feels a lot more responsive, and a lot of it could just is experience. And that's not necessarily to say that, it's always guaranteed that the later games are going to have better gameplay or have better controls. Look at Uncharted 3. Uncharted 3 still, like we said, is still good, and there's still cool moments in it, but overall it doesn't feel like the true successor that Uncharted 2 deserved.
Right.
I would almost say Uncharted 4 is that successor that Uncharted 2 deserved. But in general, I felt like the controls were a little bit more responsive. I also felt that the platforming segments, you ever notice in Uncharted 1 through 3, if there was a jump that you have to make, but based off of all the physics that you've seen so far in the game, there's no way you can make it. And so what happens is you go for it, and the game just launches you forward unnaturally to cling to that wall, and it breaks your immersion just a little bit, so you can tell, like, okay, this was meant, the designers meant it this way, which is fine, but now it feels like they're just pulling me along versus me doing it myself. And Uncharted 4 never really felt like that to me. There's a couple moments here and there, but for the most part, it was pretty solid. I will say my biggest issue with the gameplay is that the pathing isn't always obvious or isn't always indicated well. And it's okay to not be obvious, especially in open area segments. That's fine. You're supposed to explore. Like I said, stop and smell the roses. But what I didn't like, specifically getting out of the orphanage early on in the game, where you're traversing all the different all the platforming tutorial section. That one, more than anything, actually, I would say is a platforming tutorial section, because I think in Uncharted 4, I'm trying to remember, does it start you out in the jail first, or does it start you out in the orphanage first? I can't remember now.
I think it starts you out in the orphanage.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
Oh, well, I guess technically you're on the boat with like the flash forward.
You're in the boat on the flash forward, and then you go back and you're in the orphanage, and then after the orphanage is when you're finally there. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so you explore that orphanage section, and that teaches you the platforming in a really safe, fun way. It gives you a little bit of test with the grappling hook. It even has you do the thing where you're sliding down something, you have to jump off of it, throw the grappling hook, and then swing, which is such a fun mechanic to do because it doesn't. They're pretty generous with your timing window to hit that, but it makes you feel so fucking badass to be able to pull that off. But anyway, so there is a couple moments in there, specifically at the end, where you're finally out of the orphanage and you're on this fire escape and you have to get down, and there is no clear way to get down. And then because there is a ladder there, but you're looking for the clear, like, okay, where's the handhelds? Where's the thing that I can drop down to? You have to. And the ladder isn't like it's flush with the handrail. It goes up a little bit. So it looks like if I jump at that, I'm just going to jump and launch myself right over it. But you're supposed to stand in front of the ladder, hit jump, and then he flips over and climbs down that way, which is fine, but it wasn't as well broadcasted as it should be, especially considering it was very dark in that section. Usually they light things up very particularly.
Yeah, I feel like that's a challenge where if you compare it to, say, Uncharted 2, where it's like every ledge that they want you to walk on is either like red or yellow.
Which is a little obnoxious.
Right. So I feel like that's a
Breaks
challenge
the immersion.
They had to tackle in this one where they're going for much more like that kind of Last of Us realist looking world where it's like, you're not going to have a bunch of like bright yellow bricks. So how do we just, you might have like some bird poop or something that's like white on part of the wall. That's like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to climb. Where it still gives you that hint and still looks really real, but you definitely end up like maybe wandering around for a minute or two going, so where is that brick I'm supposed to climb?
My favorite trope of the PS4 generation so far is, it's on display here in Uncharted 4 as well, is where you have specific platforming segments and they have the same indicators conveniently in every single spot. So for example, in the parts of the walls where you're supposed to sidle, where you're flat up against a wall and you have to shimmy across, they have these big scratch marks that show you can do that. They do similar things in the Tomb Raider games where you can tell, oh, this is something I want to have to jump off the wall and up, because there's conveniently this giant white strip of paint that's just chilling there, or just wood with white. But either way, there's like white paint either on the rocks or on the wood or just something like that. Horizon Zero Dawn, even to an extent, which is less platforming, but still has some of those elements into it. There's like, those yellow clips that you have to climb up. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I always found that kind of funny that was what they... that they have those indicate that it's just conveniently always there.
Yeah, that same type of like... I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it's like the purposeful like wear and tear, artificial wear and tear, of like an area where it's like,
it feels
somebody probably went up this before, so you should too.
Exactly, and it's like there's places that you tell like this, no one's ever fucking been here. Why is there paint on this rock?
This house has been abandoned for 300 years. Who put this here?
Or even in now, I will say games that do it well, and I'm going to do an episode on this game eventually, but in Horizon Zero Dawn, the stealth grass, they built that into the whole environment. You see it all over the place, even where there's areas that you don't necessarily need stealth. So it kind of makes it obvious, like, oh, I could sneak around here, but at the same time, you don't always need to. So they built that specific attribute into the environment where it didn't feel out of place when you saw it. You would see enemies and you would see grass and you go, okay, I can stealth in this section. And it was such a fine balance of communication of what the designers intended you to do and what they intended you to do and what they communicated to you. Because sometimes like we were saying in Uncharted 2 and 3 and 1, where it's just these bright yellow strips, is like that's what they intended to do, and they communicated to me, but it kind of breaks the immersion when they do it. Versus in Horizon, granted, Horizon is a good number of years later. I think actually almost exactly 10 years later to the first Uncharted. The Horizon came out in early 2017, and I think Uncharted 1 came out late 2007, but still about 10 years apart. But they have it much more subtle. The communication is subtle, but it still gets across to you so that as soon as you see it, you know what you have to do. So I think those are my biggest issues in terms of the gameplay with Uncharted 4, is just the communication wasn't always as apparent as I'd like it. It doesn't need to be, like you were saying, just blatant. It doesn't have to be like blaring in my face like what I have to do constantly. But at the same time, there was a few spots where I was kind of like, I wish this would have been, because nothing's worse than getting to a platform and not knowing where you're supposed to go next. Like you're looking around to see something and you just can't see anything. It's one thing when it's a maze and you don't know where you go, or it's a one thing when there's a group of enemies and you don't know how to get around them. That to me is more on you then. You just can't figure it out, versus when you're on a platform and you have nowhere else to go, that's on the designer.
Yeah, and that's like, I think, another one of the side effects of having the more open aspects, where it's like a little bit less linear, where sometimes there's just platforms that don't go anywhere, and it's like that. I mean, you can go up there if you're like trying to fight somebody, and like maybe that's high ground or something that may not necessarily be needed for you to like get to the next stage of the level. Whereas in the earlier ones, it's like much more obvious. If there's a high platform, you're going to go there. Either you're going to find a treasure, or that's where you're supposed to go. So it can definitely get a little more confusing, because you have all the like extraneous environmental stuff that you don't necessarily need, but it does add like a little more interesting traversal.
It makes exploration a little bit more interesting then. I guess one last thing I want to talk about in terms of gameplay specifically is that the final boss. I actually think the final boss was it was obnoxious to do, but at the same time, I don't blame the game developers. I blame my inability to get the timing right for it, because it balanced really well the difference between what the other Uncharted's were, which were quick time events, with the exception of 2. We've said before, 2 has the best final boss in the entire series, at least in my opinion. I think Lazarevich is the best final boss. Not the best villain, but the best final boss. He's a good villain.
Oh, he's a pretty good villain, yeah.
I actually think Rafe from this one is a really good villain. And the fact that I feel bad because I couldn't remember, like, Lost Legacy is the sequel to this, sort of. And, well, not sort of, definitely is. It takes place after the events of Uncharted 4, where you play as Chloe. And it focuses on Chloe Nadine, and I completely forgot who Nadine was, but she's she's the henchman essentially for this game. The main villain is Rafe, who you actually see in the beginning of the game. He's in the jail with you, which, replaying it, because I couldn't remember who the villain was when I restarted it up, and when I was replaying it and I saw Rafe again, I'm like, oh, yeah, he's definitely got to be the villain. There's no way around this. Like, there's the guy who paid to sneak you into the prison, like, he's just obsessed with this. It has to be him. And after rereading the plot again, I was definitely right. But I thought he was a really good villain, and I like how he kind of loses himself in his passion to get his obsession to get this treasure.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting character, because he comes from a rich family, and there's like the family company or whatever that he's kind of taken over. But he really wants to prove that like he can do something himself, where he's heard all these stories about how Nate has like found Shambhala and he found El Dorado and blah 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 blah, and he's like, he wants to make that kind of name for himself. And I
almost feel like it's jealousy, because he sees that Nate has no money, but he's done all this stuff.
Yeah, and he's spending his family's entire fortune going after this Captain Avery's treasure to be like, look what I found, look what I was able to do.
Yeah.
And he, by the end of the game, when it's like, he needs either Sam or Nate to like help him get there, because he's just not quite smart enough to figure it out himself. And you can imagine how like frustrating that must be for someone in his position, where he's like,
who has all the resources but not enough of the smarts. And he's not dumb by any stretch of the imagination. He's not. I would say Lazarevich is more dumb, not meaning that Lazarevich is actually dumb, but I would say he's more intelligent than any of the previous villains. And maybe not Marlowe. Marlowe had some weird mysticism shit with her. Who knows what's going on with her? But let's segue into talking about the story then, since we were talking about characters and whatnot. The story of this game, I think, is its strongest point. I love the gameplay a lot. I know I said I thought the gameplay was my favorite, but now that I'm like really thinking about it, what sticks with me the most is the story. Specifically, I don't know if I've said this before on the podcast, but I might have said it to you. I'm not good with remembering details on stories. I remember my emotions at the time. I have a very strong connection to what I felt or what a game made me feel at the time. That's why Journey made such a big impact on me when I first played it. That's why Outer Wilds made such a big impact on me. Did you play Outer Wilds, by the way?
It's on my list. I have not gotten to it yet.
Before you go today, if you're interested, if we have time, I have it on the Xbox One. Cool. Anyway, Outer Wilds made a big impact on me. Just games like that, where I remember the emotions that they gave me more than I remember the details of the story. And I've been making a point this year to, in whatever I watch, no matter what it is, I want to try to focus more on the characters' names and like the specific technical details. Because someone asked me what a show or a movie or a game was, I'll say, oh, it was really good. Oh yeah, what was it about? Well, and then I can't say anything, you know? So this game, I thought the story was really well executed overall, and kind of going back to it and rereading the plot, and also just seeing how Naughty Dog relayed the information to you through the cutscenes and through gameplay. And I was talking to my one friend Cody, who has not been on the show before, but he's going to be on at some point. There's a level in the game where Nate and Elena are mad at each other. And the whole level is silent. There's no music playing. And it's just them, and it's right after they got into a big fight, and you have to platform together. Her and Nate and Elena have to travel this island together, trying to get to the fictional city, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And it is just so emotionally charged despite not having anything in it. You know what I'm talking about? That is good storytelling. That is powerful storytelling. And you can't... It's one of the reasons why video games should be considered high art, because you can't do that in a movie. You can't do that in a book. In books and movies, the audience is being controlled by the person creating it. In video games, there's a whole argument to be made that game designers are really controlling you because they have you doing certain things. But if you really think about it in that instance, you could spend your entire time, you could spend so much time in that level just walking around and just have Elena and Drake mad at each other the whole time in this awkward, uncomfortable silence.
Yeah, as much as the game developers have laid that out to happen, ultimately you're in control. You can just stand there and just not progress the story. Whereas a movie, if you're sitting there, the things are just going to happen in front of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's why I like this story so much, is because it hits you hard. And because it deals with Nate and Elena's relationship. You meet Sam and he becomes such a fully fleshed out character, and you feel Nate and Sam's relationship in it. You also like Sully's back, which I didn't get to in my replay, so I didn't get to see much of him in the game, but it's just they really did I think Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley, their biggest strength is writing. Like that's their biggest strength as directors. And it shows because they wrote The Last of Us, some of the best writing in video game, not just video games, just in media, period. And I think they definitely continued that trend in this game as well. What do you think? Do you agree?
Yeah, so I remember when we were talking about Uncharted 3, however many weeks or months ago that was, we mentioned how you don't really understand what necessarily happened between Nate and Elena, where it's like it looks like they got married, but they're kind of separated, and like by the end of the game, they're like kind of together again.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of behind the scenes stuff. Something happened between the two games that you weren't really involved in. And I remember saying that I kind of liked that because it would have made the game uncomfortable if you're kind of dealing with that stuff unfolding in front of you. Uncharted 4 takes it the whole other direction, and I actually do really like it this time around, where clearly they're going for a more serious, like, adult-toned game, and these are, like, real-world things that real-world people deal with, and between, like, you know, the deception between Drake and Sam, and, you know, how Nate's, you know, kind of lying to Elena, and Elena's kind of trying to...
And Sam's lying to Nate, too.
Yeah.
You find out... So... Well, let's dive into the plot real quick, just so people have context for everything. So, the beginning of the game, you always play as Nathan Drake, but you see a young Nathan Drake in a Catholic orphanage, and his brother helps him get out, and his brother basically tells him he's going away. And Nate's pissed about this, and then so that whole thing is just mainly to show their relationship. It's to show that Nate has a brother. Other than that, and the gameplay is meant to teach you platforming because it's a long series of platforming segments.
And this basically just kind of touches on what Marlowe had said in Uncharted 3, where it's like you were surrendered to an orphanage, and like a Catholic orphanage or whatever, and blah, 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 blah. But I guess his brother was there too, and then he kind of aged out of it, and then he's off doing his own thing.
And Nate wants to be like him, and he's rambunctious, just like his brother was, and kind of I can't think of the word, but a rascal. I hate that because it sounds so like golly gee willikers, mister.
Right.
Like, you know, it sounds really old timey, but he was a troublemaker. There we go. Still old timey, but not quite as bad as rascal. But he caused a lot of trouble, just like his brother did. He looked up to. It's very clear that Nate looks up to his brother a lot, and even when it flashes forward and you're at the Panamanian jail, and he very much looks up to him there. And basically, they sneak into this jail so that way, because they're on the hunt for Henry Avery's treasure, like we mentioned before. You find out later on in the game the reason why is that their mother was also doing the same thing. Now, their mother had since passed away, and there's actually a level where you sneak into, because her house is now owned by someone else, and you sneak into that house to find out what more about their mom.
Right. So, you know, chronologically, it so happens that you are in the first level where Sam breaks you out of the orphanage.
And then later on, that's the very next thing that he breaks him out to go to that house.
Right, which you don't know until, like, I don't know, chapter 17 or something.
Yeah, it's super late in the game. So their mother was the one tracking Avery and trying to figure out, and also something with their relation with Francis Drake, which I forget exactly. Do you remember it all?
That might have just been another one of her projects that she had been working on. Because I know they had mentioned that she would talk about it around the dinner table, and that's kind of where they both got their passion for history and treasure hunting.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that I can find on it, but there's not really a whole lot, at least. But so anyway, so that's why they're trying to find Avery's treasure. And in the prison in Panama, there's Avery's second mate was in prison there, and they find this old crucifix. Sorry, it wasn't a crucifix. I forget what the actual term was, but because a crucifix has Christ on it, like on the cross, this was the penitent thief, which Saint Isthmus, Isthmus the thief. Dismas, sorry, not Isthmus, Dismas. Yeah, Saint Dismas.
Where he's like kind of not necessarily crucified. He's just kind of like got his arms up over the cross, and he's tied up there.
He still is he was crucified next to Christ on the cross, but I don't know if that's artistically, like, was that really how he was hung up, or if it was an artistic interpretation?
Yeah, it didn't look like his hands were nailed up.
My guess is that it had to. I mean, I guess you're not crucified if you aren't nailed to it. Oh, that's so brutal.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about the exact science behind.
But anyway, but yeah, you're right. His arms are not. Like, there's no nails in his hands. He's just like bent. He's like tied up around it with his own arms almost. They find, a hollow Saint Dismas idol, and basically they figure, since now they know it's St. Dismas, they speculate there is a cathedral St. Dismas in Scotland, but that's where all shit goes. That's where everything goes to hell. The guard the guard that they bribed to get into the jail now wants a cut of it, and Rafe, who is, you find out, is the villain later on, kills him, and now they have to escape from the jail. And in the process of escaping, Sam gets shot and falls down, and from what we thought, dies. Flash forward 15 years. All the adventures of Uncharted 1 through 3 have happened in those 15 years. So everything in this Panamanian jail happened before the events of Uncharted 1 and 2 and 3. Now he's retired from being a treasure hunter. He's working on a salvage crew, and he's married to Elena. This was a really interesting section of the game for me because they took it so slow here. They really slowed down the game to get you the sense of what married life was like with Elena.
And I really liked how they kind of eased you into it, because it starts off where Nate is in like scuba gear, and he's looking for, and you think he's like down there looking for some kind of treasure, and it turns out that it's just some a shipping container full of copper wire or something.
Yeah.
And as they
they're in a city. It's not even like they're in some lost continent.
Yeah,
or
you
something
assume
like
he's
that.
off on like some like Great Barrier Reef or something, and they pull it up, and it's just like, I don't know what kind of boat, a cargo boat or something.
Something like it was a salvage boat.
That's just like
salvage tanker
under a bridge with a river that goes like right through this big city. And it's like, oh, he wasn't like out in the Amazon or something. He's like, no, he's just,
So then he gets, like you said, he finds a bunch of copper wire to sell. And so he goes back, does some paperwork, and his boss talks to him about doing this job in, I think, Malaysia. But not all the permits are through, and Drake has sworn off the treasure hunting lifestyle. He's not doing it. He doesn't want any part of it. And so he goes home to Elena, and he's up in the attic. When you see him at home, he's up in his attic, and it's kind of cool because there's little tiny trinkets from all the previous adventures. You see the thing from Uncharted 3, like the little crypto, like where he sticks the ring in and it helps to, it's the cipher. It's a cipher. It's the cipher from Uncharted 3. You see one of the skulls from Uncharted 1. I think he has some of the Chintamani stones, like a little vial of Chintamani stones from Uncharted 2.
The blue fire stuff.
And when you can actually shake it and it lights up, which was kind of cool.
Oh, interesting.
And then he ends up getting then I don't know why they do this. I almost wonder if it's not a tutorial for shooting, because you shoot in the opening cutscene, a cutscene where you're on a boat in a storm and you're just driving to it. And you crash, and that's when you go to the orphanage, and it flashes back. So it was a flash forward, like you said before in the beginning. But you get a Nerf gun and you're just shooting things around. I don't know. I guess it's just showing Nate's personality.
Yeah,
I guess
I thought that was cute, because it's like, he's retired, he's not doing that anymore, but he still kind of wants to have that little bit of thrill of shooting the things that are popping out. Yeah,
I always
being a genocidal maniac.
He's killed so many people. I think we talked about it before. Like, his body count has to be in the hundreds, if not thousands.
Thousands for sure.
Especially between everyone's playthroughs. But Elena calls him down to dinner. There's not really much that you do up there, except you just it's a walk down memory lane. You see a lot of the stuff from previous adventures. You see photos and diaries from the previous games. You actually have like Drake's diary and whatnot. So you go down and you have dinner, and one of the coolest shout outs or like cameos, you play one of the levels from Crash Bandicoot. Because he basically, you can tell he's, like you were saying, he yearns for that adventure. So he kind of is like, the dialogue in this scene is really good in general. But Elena kind of tells something off, and he kind of deflects and says, well, let me just play your game. I'll play you for it. And whoever loses does the dishes. And you can play the first one of the levels from Crash Bandicoot. And it's a legit 1-to-1 port of it. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, that was
of that one level.
It was so cool because he's like, oh, here, I'll just play your game or whatever, and you hear the classic PS1 startup sound, and you're like, oh shit, they're playing a PS1, and then it pulls over, and there you are playing Crash Bandicoot. And I was just like, because Crash Bandicoot, technically the second game, but Crash Bandicoot was my first proper video game.
Mm-hmm.
So that had a special.
And I think I've told the story of Crash Bandicoot for me, where I was playing it at a friend's birthday party in like a laundry closet. It was like a laundry hallway. It was so weird where they had their TVs. Like it wasn't their main TV. It was like something set up on the side for the party. But anyway, so you can play one level of Crash Bandicoot. Nate does it, and then Nate ends up losing. I think there's a way you can win. I bet you there's a way you can win. I just haven't done it yet, because you have to collect a certain number of fruit, and you have to do it really fast. And
right, you have to like break all the boxes, get all the fruit, and not die. And then I think that's how you beat her score. And there's a trophy for that.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I died once, and I didn't break all the boxes, so it didn't count. But yeah, so then he cuts to Nate at his office again, and he gets a knock on the door before the business is open, and he's pissed off. He's like, "Hey, we're closed," blah blah blah. And he opens the door and he finds Sam alive, and he just can't believe it. And so Sam tells him about how he got out, and he says that he was let out by this drug lord named, I forget what he said his name is. It's Hector something. I'm gonna look it up real quick. But he says it's like Hector something or another. Hector Alcazar.
Yeah.
And because Alcazar lets him out because Sam tells him about Avery's treasure, and he's regaling him with these stories of legend, and now Alcazar wants him to find it. So Sam comes back, and he tries to recruit Nate to come find this treasure again so they can do it. And that's where the adventure kicks off. That's like it really kicks off. And I forget how it goes from there, but hold on.
If you want to look that up, I have one other thing that I want to jump back to. So before you're actually playing Crash Bandicoot with Elena, you come down from the attic, and you can actually just kind of wander around their house. And that was, I feel like, one of the best environments that they put together, because you can like go into their bedroom, and it's like there's some clothes on the floor, and like the bed's not really made. It's just like so lived in, and you can even like pick up their wedding photos and page through those, which I thought was really nice. Yeah, and you just like look like, oh, you got the laundries running, and then you can go into even like Elena's office there, where she's got her, what I think it was like an iMac or something that she does her work on, and you can pick up some of like the magazine covers that she's done work for, where it's like a lot of tourism things around like Malaysia and like Taiwan, I think she was doing exposés about. And I don't know, I just thought that was really cool, giving that like a little bit of extra background info on where the two of them are at in their lives.
I 100% agree, because it just builds the characters even more. It shows a semblance of what their married life is like, and you can tell by their conversations that they are very much in love, and they're very much happy with each other.
There's definitely some distance in Drake though, because you can tell that he still yearns for that adventure. And like even when he's like stamping stuff in his office at work, where he's just kind of like, you can tell that he's just doing his job so he can get money, so he can live his life. Right?
Exactly.
And it's there's not a lot of passion left in it, and you can kind of see that when he's talking to Elena,
because he stares off at a picture, and in the picture it's got this beautiful like jungle scenery, and he just the game has the audio of the jungle, like drums go in, and Elena's voice fades out slowly, very almost Jumanji like.
Yeah, totally.
So Sam agrees to go. Sorry, Nate agrees to go with Sam. And he actually lies to Elena, and she tells her that he's taking that salvage job that his boss tried to offer him before, but obviously he's not really going on it. He's going with Sam, and this is where Sully comes in too. So Sully comes in, and they are trying to steal a duplicate idol, duplicate Dismas idol from an illegal auction in Italy. Super specific, but anyway. And that's where you see Rafe again, and you meet Nadine Ross, who's the henchwoman of the game. And they're still searching for Avery's treasure. They find a map inside the idol that leads them to the St. Dismas Cathedral, which points back to what they had a hunch with back in the Panamanian jail. Panamanian jail. Anyway.
And I love when they introduce Nadine, because like Sully knows her from some other job that they were kind of competing on.
Makes sense.
And they're both like very charming together. And it was just like, oh, okay, that's a cool character. And then, he'll be on his little headset and he'll be like, oh, Drake, we got a problem. We got Nadine. She's all like a mercenary contractor or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting when there's more backstory to the characters than what we know. It's not just kind of like, oh, here's a bad guy, and I'm the bad guy for the game, so, yeah.
Nadine's an interesting villain, too, because she is not a villain who believes in the cause. She's a villain because she's a mercenary, and she's hired by Rafe to do a job. And she's very much not wanting to do... She doesn't even really want to be a mercenary. I remember getting the vibe from her, or at least specifically, I think you find out more of this in Lost Legacy, that it was her father's business that she kind of took over. Right.
So she's almost in a very similar situation as Rafe, where it's like she's kind of taking over the family business and wants to prove that she can do it just as well or better than her parents did. And this just happens to be a job that she was hired for, so she's going to see it to the end.
And to show the parallel between the two characters, at the end of the game, Nadine decides to say, fuck this, and leaves, because she's like, my life's not worth this. The life of my men aren't worth this. Rafe ends up buying her out pretty much. So I forget if she leaves and survives, but Rafe is refusing to let go of this obsession of his, and that's what ultimately kills him in the end. Well, Nate ends up killing him in the end with a sword. It was a sword fight. It was fucking great. But so because now they know that they're against each other, they're both searching for Avery's treasure. They find a map inside of that the idol of Saint Dismas, a copy of that idol.
Right. So they do a quick heist, because obviously they're not going to spend like the $10 million that everyone's bidding on it. But Rafe would have won it had they not stolen it.
Because he has all that fucking money.
Right.
They go to St. Dismas Cathedral in the Scottish Highlands, and there they discover a hidden temple, and wherein lies a map highlighting Kings Bay and Madagascar. Now, this synopsis leaves... I mean, that's what happens, but that level in St. Dismas Cathedral is really cool. There's a lot of fun exploration in that area.
Even before that level, when they're still escaping from the auction thing.
Yeah.
That's like the first kind of stealth combat you get, that was the first time where I really saw that it was a non-linear kind of setup, where it's like you can jump to any one of these rooftops and there may be guys with flashlights there, or maybe not, or it was like almost too much for me to take, because as I had said before, I like that kind of puzzle element of like figuring out the patrols, and this was just kind of...
It's a little overwhelming.
You're just thrown in the deep end. I think you don't even start out with a gun.
Man, after we're done recording today, I'm definitely going to play more Uncharted 4. Because I've said this already, I think on my year in review episode, but I have a big project coming up for this summer, and I've been working a lot on it, but I still want to try to make time to play games that, even if they're not for an episode of the podcast, that's my ultimate goal. Is I want to be able to get back to being able to play games again that aren't necessarily just for an episode of the podcast. And it's still a first world problem to complain about. Oh no, I have to play games. But there is something to be said of just playing games that you want to play and not worried about a schedule to get them either done or at least a sizable amount completed by. So they go to Kings Bay in Madagascar, and the Drakes and Sully learn that Avery, Thomas Toe, and 10 other pirate captains pulled their treasures together. So this is, I'm guessing, where the historical fiction comes in, because they knew about Henry Avery and his treasure, his famous heist. But this is, I'm assuming, where the historical fiction comes in. They pulled their treasures together. Following clues to a tower in the city, Nate uncovers the map to Libertalia, the fabled pirate utopia founded by Avery and the other captains. By the way, this is all read from Wikipedia. Don't at me. The groups return to their hotels and to their hotel to find Elena waiting.
Right. Okay. So they're at the Dismas Cathedral.
Yes.
They find Avery's fake grave.
Yes.
Which has all the like trials or something that they have to complete to show that they're like worthy of joining the cause of Avery's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they kind of figure out that all these other pirate captains are kind of coming together and, hoarding all their treasure together.
Hoarding all their treasure together to create Libertalia.
Right. So that points them over to Madagascar, which is the biggest, most sandboxy area probably in the game, I think.
100%. Definitely.
And there's actually like a couple different routes that you can take to get to the final bit, which was maddening for me trying to find treasures. Because if you take one of the routes and you go too far, then you can't go back.
You have to redo the whole level if you really want to.
Right. But I'm sure that's just a problem that I have. I'm
I'm
sure everyone else likes it.
I noticed with you, there's very specific games that you go for the completionist thing. You try to generally complete a lot of games, but it's only the games you really, really like. I noticed that you really go for the completionist thing. For me, it has to be a game that I adore, like more than 10 out of 10 enjoy, because or it's just dumb easy. For example, Spider-Man, the Marvel Spider-Man game, that was something I loved. But if there was something obnoxious to get, I wasn't going to waste my time with it. But that one was an easy enough one to platinum where I didn't really mind going through everything, they find Elena waiting at a hotel room, and she is understandably pissed. Nate has lied to her now about this, and they've gone through a lot of shit beforehand too. Like not in this game, but in previous games.
Yeah, you definitely get the vibe that, based at the end of Uncharted 3, when Elena was saying, like, oh, it's always another treasure with you. Why can't you just, like, settle down and be, like, normal, right? Like, there's something wrong with him. Like, there's that obsession that drives him. And you got the feel that when he lost Drake's ring and, replaced it with his wedding ring, that he was kind of like, that phase of his life is over. And I don't know how many years later this is. Maybe we'll say like 5, because that's like from the game release times.
Yeah.
When he's all settled down, it seems like that was kind of the deal that they made, where it's like either you adventure or you get to be with Elena, and he chose Elena, right? So like no more adventure. So
and I think she even acknowledged that he still had this inside of him, because before all this happened, she encouraged him to take that salvage job that his boss was offering him, and that it was going to be it was another country. You're going on an adventure again. You're salvaging treasure, but Nate refused to, because he still had that mentality. He's like, I know Elena. I can understand his thought process, even though Elena was just being a good spouse and just saying no, like you need to do this for you. I think she could tell, even though Nate didn't want to admit it at the time. And she's really trying to push him to go out and have adventures. Like, he doesn't, just because he's married now doesn't mean that he still can't have adventures. He's just got to be more responsible with his adventures.
Safe adventures where you're not shooting people.
Exactly. And, but Nate said, no, I'm not going to do that. It's under the table type of thing. There was no permits given, so they could get arrested and thrown into jail and blah, blah, blah. So I understand why he didn't do it, because I can relate to it a lot. Your spouse says, "Oh no, it's okay," and in the back of your head you're like, "It's a trap. Don't." It's not really okay.
Sure,
it's a trap. But Elena, I don't think it was a trap. I think she just wanted what's best for her husband. And then when he finally couldn't contain it anymore, when the adventure of a lifetime, but pulled like another amazing adventure, was knocking on his door, and on top of that, his dead brother's alive. It broke down that wall.
I think that really was the determining factor for him, was that Sam basically was like, listen, this drug dealer cartel guy is going to kill me if we don't find the treasure. And he's like, I mean, okay, I guess we'll go do it, even though like I really don't want to, because I don't want to jeopardize my relationship with Elena. But I think when they get back to their hotel and Elena's sitting there looking at all the maps and the notes that they have scrawled out on all the desks and beds and everything, as he's walking in, he's like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. We almost got it. And she hears that, and that was just like, ooh, Nate, no.
You're going back. You're regressing.
Yeah.
And like we said, the bigger thing is that he fucking lied to her. He lied to her about it. And she tries to get him to abandon the quest, to stop. And he refuses, and he sends actually Sully to go after Elena, which is a rookie mistake, man. Like, you always go after your spouse when you're the one that's at fault.
And you feel bad for Sully because he's like...
He's stuck in the middle.
Yeah, because he was like, listen, man, like, I know that we're kind of in the wrong here, and, you know, I love you both. But I guess, okay, I'll go follow Elena and make sure she's safe.
That's Sully's a good friend.
Yeah.
I love... Sully and him have such a awesome subtle bromance throughout all the games. It's not like this loving affection, you know, not Turk and JD from Scrubs by any means, but you can tell there's so much, like, they like each other. They genuinely care for each other greatly. I was thinking about this before. We were talking about how good the writing is, and so far, like, the storyline is really well paced and just in general just very well executed. Do you think there wasn't as many heavy moments in the previous Uncharted games because maybe that's not one of Amy Hennig's strengths?
It's possible. It might have just been her style at the time, was to kind of keep it a little more
lighthearted.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was just the aesthetic she was going for, but I can honestly think of only one moment in all the games where there was a profound emotional moment that I actually felt hit me. And I talked about it in the last Uncharted episode on Uncharted 3, where Nate comes back and Elena's there waiting for him, and he, you know, rests his head on her lap, and he apologizes, and he doesn't even get to you. He just goes, Elena, and she goes, I know, you know, that's I think the only time I ever felt the emotion of something happening. The other times where Sully dies, or quote unquote dies, or you think Sully dies, I'd say the only one that actually got me was Uncharted 1, but that's just because it just surprised me. It wasn't because I cared as much. I mean, I still care a lot about Sully, but that one, it just shocked me that I thought someone died that early on into the game. And in Uncharted 3, when you do it, I remember being pretty shocked by it, but I remember playing through it. I'm like, there's no way he's dead. They wouldn't have killed him like that. So it just, I don't know. I don't know if it was because that's the aesthetic she chose for and she stuck to it, or is it maybe she chose that aesthetic because writing those intense, serious moments might not be her strength. I'm not criticizing Amy Hennig either. Like, I am not a good writer by any stretch of the imagination. So and the writing in those games, especially the dialogue in all of the Uncharted games, is amazing. I'm just speaking more from, you know, this specific section. I wonder if that's just not her strength. You know, what do you think? Do you agree with that, or do you agree with that idea?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a strength issue or just kind of maybe that was the vibe she was just going for, you know?
Fair enough. So, you know, Sully goes after Elena. Nate asks Sully to take care of Elena, and they follow the map and to an island to discover Libertalia. And you basically find out that the city just went down because of a civil war. The whole city, when I say went down, I mean was destroyed. The civil, like, all the pirates died due to a civil war amongst themselves. Specifically, I believe amongst all the pirates against the founders.
So
right?
So they kind of island hop a little bit, finding clues and stuff to get to this island.
And
right?
I'm pretty sure this is where that intro scene picks back up, is when you're on the boat getting to Libertalia.
Right. It's you and Sam in like a fishing boat, I guess. And you're kind of motoring it towards there during a storm. And you crash, and, like, you know, you have to recover yourself, and it's like raining and you're all beat up and you're slipping on rocks and shit, which is another one of those things where I feel like I had less control of my character, which I typically don't like when I'm playing a game. Like, I want the guy to do the thing that I'm telling him to do.
But there's a narrative reason for it not happening versus just here's ice physics.
Right.
like in platformers.
Yeah. So then I guess he finds Sam at some point. He's kind of working his way through. He finds some corpses of some of the pirates that were, or not the pirates specifically, but like other treasure hunters.
Yeah.
That's where he gets his little ice pick wall climbing thing.
Okay.
From one of those guys. And I think he finds Sam with Rafe again. And they're kind of working together to figure out where exactly the city is supposed to be.
Well, what happens is that they find, by exploring the treasure, they find out that the founders moved the treasure from Libertalia to a different island, and it's actually called New Devon or New Devon Island or something like that.
Oh, well, no, New Devon is
that's where the treasure got moved to.
It's all in the same island, though. New Devon is where all of their mansions are.
Oh, moved it across the island to New Devon, which is where all the mansions are. Yeah.
So I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with the Wikipedia synopsis.
I mean, no, this is that Nate refuses to abandon the quest and sends Sully after Elena. The Drakes follow the map to an island to discover Libertalia. They find evidence of a civil war. The founders stole the city's treasure and moved it across the island to New Devon, an extravagant and well-fortified town built for them. En route, the brothers are cornered by Rafe, who reveals the portion where I kind of interrupted you way back ago about Sam lying to Nate.
Right.
And this is where that lie gets revealed.
Okay, so yeah, so this is, they're shipwrecked, Nate's finding his way, and then he sees that Sam is with Rafe. Or does he just runs into Sam, I guess. He just runs into Sam, and then they're kind of going together and like climbing up like a tower to find where the city is. And that's where they run into Rafe. And that's where you find out that actually this whole Alcatraz guy, totally fictional. He died in a prison escape, like a while ago. And what actually happened is that Rafe found out that Sam was still alive, paid to get him released, and then they had been working together when, I guess, Sam saw a break in the case and decided, I don't want to work with Rafe anymore. I'm going to go find my brother and bring him in on this, and then we'll do this together. And that was such a betrayal for Nate, because it's like he blew up his whole life to help Sam find this treasure to save his life. And it turns out that he was just trying to get the treasure for himself.
And on top of that, I even think like you said, he blew up his whole life, but also he's been out for 2 years and he didn't once tell Nate that he was alive.
Mm-hmm.
He was more obsessed with the treasure than telling his family, his only family, that he still was alive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a great plot twist near the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great, and Sam makes up for it. I forget how. Or maybe they just make up for it by like surviving.
Yeah, because he kind of, so after their whole scuffle there,
Rafe actually tries to shoot Nate and Sam protects him, but Sam shields him and Nate is knocked off the cliff and falls unconscious. Elena rescues him,
right? And
that's in this point of it. That's where Nate reveals this is why we did all this. It's because it's their dying wish of the mother, and you don't know, not dying wish, but it's the last thing of their mother. It's what the last thing they remember of their mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so it explains specifically, it gives a reason other than just Nate's lust for treasure, lust for adventure. It gives a more personal reason as to why he would be so adamant about finding Avery's treasure, because it's not just another El Dorado or Shambhala or a Ram of the Pillars. It's what his mother was looking for,
And you have to, the little suspension of disbelief is that Elena just found him somewhere on this island.
Yeah.
Like, let alone she found the
you're
island,
right. I didn't even
like,
think about that.
But like specifically the like river that he had washed up in. But I feel like they did a good job with like kind of brushing past that, because it's such like an emotionally charged conversation between them, where like Nate, he feels terrible and he feels lied to, and then he kind of can really empathize with Elena, how she must feel when he was lying to her. And he just like is so somber and like apologetic, and he's like not his normal like upbeat like oh crap self. Yeah. And he says, thank you for saving me. And she's like, I almost didn't this time. And it was just like, oh man,
dagger to the heart.
And then, but that's where that whole,
even in your delivery of it, I could hear it in my head, and I almost cried a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. But that brings up that the level that you had mentioned towards the beginning of the podcast, where there's like no music, it's just the two of them kind of working together to try to figure stuff out. And just like that's another one of those environmental things that they added in, where you have like optional conversations that you can have. And it's not necessarily like you're choosing what Drake says or whatever. It's just kind of a little triangle pops up over her head. And if you get over there quick enough, you can say something to her and have that exchange. But all of those are like very much kind of, oh, hey, there's a waterfall over there. Do you want to go up that? Yeah, okay. Let's do that. And it's just like, they're
mad at it. She's so mad at him, but she loves him so fucking much.
And he's just, I feel like we've all been in a situation like that, where you're with a loved one that you've kind of wronged, but you feel terrible about it, and you're just kind of like, oh God, anything to do to make up for this. Like, I'm so sorry.
Get us out of this situation.
Yeah.
No, I can very much relate to that. I'm thankful that, my wife and we don't fight all that often, but when we have, it's that type of sensation. It's that awkward feeling. Or even when she's made me mad, when she's done something, it's like, I actually still want to be around her, but I'm still pissed beyond all belief. There are very few times when I'm actually mad enough at someone just to leave a room, but I understand. So yeah, so Nate and Elena continue on, and they descend farther into, they go into New Devon, and Nate and Elena learn that Libertalia descended into conflict over the treasure. Of course, there's 400 million, at least from Avery alone, let alone the other 9 pirates. Toe and Avery poisoned the other founders, so the 2 pirates, Toe and Avery, poisoned the other 8 and absconded with the horde. But at the very end, Avery betrayed Toe.
Right. So
T-E-W, by the way. I'm assuming you would say Toe.
I think it's 2.
2? That actually makes a lot more sense.
But yeah, I mean, they get to Libertalia, and it's cool because it goes back to like the Uncharted 1 vibe, where it's Nate and Elena, and they're finding Libertalia, which is just kind of like a proper kind of like colonial town. And you have, or is it with Sam? I think it's with Sam.
Well, yeah, I think it's with Sam that you discover Libertalia, but because it's after that, when they go through Libertalia and they find where they move the treasure to, is when they start to head over to New Devon.
Right.
That's when they get confronted by Rafe, and that's when Nate falls off a cliff and Elena saves him.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's
I'm
between
sorry.
Libertalia and New Devon.
I'm a little turned around here.
It's been a while since we played it, so.
But when they find that, you get those little hints of like what really happened, because there's like an underground tunnel that's been built that has all sorts of like writing about the how the founders, being like those 10 or 12 or whatever captains, are definitely wronging the citizens of Libertalia, which is like the opposite of what it's supposed to be. Basically, like everyone in Libertalia, it's almost like a communist type thing, where you're all banding together to build this free city. And when the founders were like, oh, we're going to take all of our money back, that really spat in the face of everybody else. And as you said, they discover that when they go into the very extravagant, not armory, treasury, and it's totally empty. And you see all the portraits of the founders. They're all torn up and have like liar painted on them and stuff, and thief and degenerate or whatever. And you even go further to find a bunch of like soldiers in kind of almost like a Spanish soldier, kind of like metal breastplate type guys.
Yeah.
That I guess were like guarding stuff with like spears and cannons and shit. And then like all the dead citizens who were coming to like fight for their money. And that kind of leads you up towards New Devon. And there's, you've got like dead people in cages that are like hanging everywhere as like warning to the other
others,
people.
yeah.
But it's like totally one of those things that you see, like, you know, in like Pirates of the Caribbean or something. You see
Muppet
like
Treasure Island,
yeah,
my personal favorite.
Yeah, but you have like those. That's what they do to pirates, where they just like throw them up in a cage and let the crows eat them, and it's like, Jesus, dude.
I didn't even think about that. Like that, I always just thought of a cage like, oh, that's uncomfortable. They're just going to eventually either a kill them, just not through starvation, but through some other, hopefully less awful means. I didn't even think about that. You slowly die of starvation, and then the crows peck at you.
Yeah, man,
that's fucked up.
It's real messed up. Yeah, but yeah, and then you find that I forget who it was that flooded the place.
I think it was Avery or two.
Okay. So everything's kind of really like swampy, but I really like these areas because you're going through like these old kind of Victorian mansions that these pirates have had built, and it's like your normal kind of like cul-de-sac neighborhood, except they're like huge mansions, and there's one for each of the founders, and you find like letters in their desks about how like this guy is suspecting of this guy of stealing his money or like getting with his wife or something, and then there's like they'll find a guy impaled with a sword that has a note stuck to him that's like, I got you back for that thing you did to me, and now I'm gonna come take your treasure or whatever. So there was definitely that whole like vibe that everybody was kind of turning against each other. And in one of them, I think there was a note from 2 that was like, hey, this is going out to all the founders. We're all going to go up to Avery's place because naturally he's got the biggest, nicest mansion.
Yeah, he's the head founder.
Right. And we're all going to have a dinner together. And they walk in there and they find all of the corpses of all the founders except for Avery and 2 all sitting there, just their skeletons at the table because they were poisoned.
What a dirty way to do them too. Like it's not even like they have the dignity to like. I mean, it's there's a thing where it's like if you poison someone, that's like a less honorable way to kill someone. I don't really know, but it's because it's deceptive. It's a very deceptive way to do things. There's also some weird sexist thing where that's like how a woman would kill somebody is with poison.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's some weird bullshit, but they deceived them. It was just plain and simple.
Yeah, and it was at that point where you're back to the Uncharted 1 vibes where it's you and Elena kind of going. And I feel like by that point, Elena's a little more like into it, and she's
because
like,
now she's into the mystery of it too.
Right.
It's almost like a one of those murder mystery story. Mm-hmm. It's almost like one of those solve the murder mystery type of thing. And now she's on that. Now she's on that hook, that kick.
And it's cool because like the conversationally together, they're not so somber and like Drake being really sorry and Elena being like really awkward about it. It's like, oh, we're kind of back to our own little groove where like this is super interesting and like let's figure this stuff out. And you still get like a little bit from Elena where she's like, we're gonna get through this and then we'll deal with our relationship afterwards. So whatever. But you get that hint that she's like, this is pretty cool. And I'm like, I get why you're into this stuff. And like, okay, cool.
And then they find out that, they keep on they progress even further. What is it? So they keep on traveling through and they end up rescuing Sam and convinces him to escape with them. But soon decides that they're going to pursue the treasure anyway. Following Sam's trail, Sam goes off his own. I'm pretty sure they convince him and then he just runs off anyway.
Right. So Sully's there too because he's the one who flew Elena in.
Yes.
And they all 4 of them meet up and they're like kind of working together to get through because there's like a port out back around the back side of the island where Sully landed his plane, and they're all kind of working their way down there. And then they find like, oh, there's the mountain, and it's totally in that mountain is where this hoard of treasure is supposed to be. And Sam I think it was like one of those moments where you're like in Indiana Jones where you throw the rope and then each person swings across, and then the rope fell and Sam was the last one, and he was like, you know what, man? Screw it. Like, don't throw me the rope. I'm gonna go find the treasure. And that was one of those, like, you know, Nate's like, no, you can't do that. You're my brother. And
it also is very Goonies-like in a sense, because in the Goonies, the big treasure, for those who haven't seen that movie, is inside of a giant cave hidden in a cliff. And it reminded me so much of the Goonies in there.
Totally,
in a great way, though. And so, yeah, he goes after the treasure, and having already following Sam's trail, Nate finds Avery's treasure-laden ship in a cavern, just like I said, just like in the Goonies. And having already collected a large amount of the treasure, Nadine refuses to risk more of Avery's traps, and Rafe coerces her by bribing her surviving men.
Right. So it's not even Nadine who wants to be there. He actually bribes her men, and they turn on her. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, shit.
And that's the thing, though. It just shows how far his obsession was willing to go. Like I said, they're both similar, where they're in this thing where they're in this. They've been thrust into a role that they kind of want, but they kind of don't want, and they feel a need to prove themselves. And Nadine's finally like, "Fuck this, man! Like, it's not worth dying. I don't need to prove anything to anybody." Which is why she's an awesome character. And so yeah, Nate confronts Rafe and Nadine in the ship hold where the skeletons of Avery and Toe lie, so that way you can see two. Each having killed each other over the treasure. Nadine betrays Rafe and leaves him with Nate and Sam. And then this is where the giant ass like fight happens, where I think it's on a sinking ship. I think the ship is sinking at this moment too.
Yeah, so I guess,
of course, because it's Uncharted, everything explodes in Uncharted.
Avery's like crazy, and he like booby trapped everything. So
yes,
like you find their bodies where it's just like two skeletons, each with the sword thrust into the other one's gut. So that was two in Avery, next to this big hold of treasure in this ship. And of course the whole place is on fire, and Sam is pinned beneath like one of the structural beams that has broken off, and like water's starting to come up, and you're fighting Rafe because it's like, you know, you're asking Rafe to like help you lift this beam to get Sam out of there so the three of you can escape, and he's like, no, I'm not going to help you escape. In fact, I'm going to kill you and then very well die here myself. But damn it, I'm going to kill you. And that's when the whole sword fight happens. And I agree. It was a little quick-timey.
But it felt more, because they didn't always give you the prompt. They told you the buttons you had to hit, and for the situations you need to hit them in, and you had to rely on your own reflexes to see when it was coming.
Right.
Which I thought was a little bit better than a quick time event.
Right. So it's a little more like, oh, is it going to be an overhead hit? Because then I got to hit triangle. Or, oh, shit, is he going to come from the left? Or is he going to go from the right? And then it's like...
And I was really bad at this section.
Yo.
I was so bad at this fight.
He was so sneaky with that shit where he'd be like, I'm going to hit you from this side. And then he'd like spin or something and hit you from the other side. I was like, damn it, Rafe.
It was so hard to anticipate. Like, you really have to hit the button a fraction of a second prior to it. It is a tough final fight, surprisingly.
And, okay, so I played through the game on crushing.
Why? That's what you do with Uncharted.
It's all in the pursuit of platinuming it, right?
Did you platinum this one too?
Well, okay, so there's a lot of different playthrough things, and I still have to do one where you like beat it in 5 hours.
Ugh.
So,
well, you can play it on easy and just like burn through it, right?
Yeah. So in crushing, you have to have like lightning fast reflexes. Like as soon as he winds up, you have to hit the block button, or you die. And it's like one hit and you're dead. You don't get like any other tries, and that was maddening.
How many? That's so frustrating.
I have other gripes with the challenging or the crushing playthrough, but I can cover that once we finish this off.
So they escape, and you find out that, or they defeat him. They defeat Rafe, and you find out that he's able to get Sam out. So they all survive. And you find out that when they get back, that Sam actually snuck Elena a little bit of coin.
Yeah, because he's a pickpocket, so he was able to reverse pickpocket some money into her jacket.
Mm-hmm. And so they ended up with, which is why I talked about before, like, where's this treasure exchange that you go to? She got a whole bunch of whatever doubloons
right.
And like, where do you take that to? How do you get money out of that? And the last part of the game is you actually play as Drake and Elena's daughter, Cassie. And it's fast forwarded a good number of years. She's probably what, 10, 11 years old? Maybe like in her early teens?
Yeah, I'd say maybe like 14.
Something like that. And you find out they've never told her about all these adventures at all. And it's a really like cool last part of the game because it's a lot like it's a lot like when you're exploring Nate's house in the beginning of the game, and it's very slow paced. You're exploring a lot of different places on this. You're on a beach. You almost have this shore house. It's clearly where Nate and Elena live. And as you explore through this house, you can see all of their adventures. And Cassie even comments, oh, that was when mom and dad did this. That was when mom and dad did that. And you can see they went on all these adventures that didn't involve murdering people.
So I don't know if you mentioned, but you're playing as Cassie.
Yes, I did. I think so. And you're going, and you're playing as Cassie, and you're going and you get to see kind of what Nate and Elena did after this happened, what they were able to do with those Spanish, well, I don't know if they're Spanish, but the money, the gold that they got from it. And they bought out the salvage business that Nate worked at so they could pick and choose where they wanted to go. Elena started up her TV documentary show again that you saw in the beginning of the first Uncharted game.
Right.
And they go out and they have all these adventures, and you can kind of see they took Cassie with them. But they never told her about everything that happened before between Golden Abyss and Uncharted 4 and 1, 2, and 3 and all that other stuff. And they never told her they found Shambhala, or that they found Aram of the Pillars, or they found El Dorado.
Yeah, and it's really cool as you wander through the house, and you're Cassie, and you have like their Labrador is with you, and he's like being funny, and you can give him treats and stuff. But yeah, you can like read all of they have like framed covers of magazines that they were featured on as like this husband-wife team who like goes out on these salvage missions, and shows all the stuff that they like kind of documented it all, and they're like archaeological superstars basically.
Yeah.
And she's like looking for them, and she kind of goes off outside the house, and they have like another little tiny, I don't know, like a guest house type thing that has all their like tools for looking at like microscopes and salvage equipment kind of deals. And there's like maps of future adventures that they're working on currently. But she finds this key, and she's like, oh, it's Dad's key. And he like never leaves this, like where I can get it. And she goes over and opens up this cabinet. That's like a wardrobe basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And she opens it up, and you see like all the stuff that Nate had in his attic at the beginning of the game is now in here. And there's like, his holster and like a shotgun and stuff. And she's like, oh my God, Dad had a gun. And, there's like a picture from the end of the first game where they've got like the big chest of treasure, and Elena's there, and you got Sully in the background. They're all holding guns, and she's like, who are these people? And then like Nate and Elena
catch her.
Right. And they're like, hey, what are you doing? And they're just like, oh God, all right, I guess we have to have like the talk now about how we used to be like crazy murderous adventurers.
And that's how the game ends, with Nate sitting down and telling her all the stories of their previous adventures prior to her being born.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a good send-off to the game. Like, I would love to see them... I never want someone other than Naughty Dog to make a Uncharted game, though I know Golden Abyss wasn't developed by Naughty Dog, but they did have a hand in it.
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, I would love to see if Sony ever makes another handheld console, which I doubt they will. Unfortunately, the Vita did not do too well.
It's Sony's fault.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah, 100%. They did the same thing with the PSP. They just ported a bunch of stuff. I actually thought they started out really strong with the Vita, with a lot of really cool, like Tearaway, Gravity Rush. They put an Uncharted game on. I still can't believe they put PS3 graphics on a handheld. That's just really cool to me. But, yeah, anyway, we're not dissecting the PS Vita in this episode. But That's a story for another time. But yeah, they ended up porting a lot of, well, last thing on the Vita, they ended up porting a lot of JRPGs to it, which is great, but that's not going to sell systems. That's for a very niche market. So anyway, I would love to see an Uncharted game like as Cassie grown up. Maybe Nate and Elaine. Nate is now the Sully role, and but he's not. But that would be kind of. It wouldn't be him like a father-daughter thing. I think that'd be a little too cutesy for that series. But maybe have her going on an adventure, and then periodically Nate comes in, not to save her, but is just involved. Like he's an expert that she can talk to about something or something like that. I think that'd be actually kind of cool to see.
You mean you could even have like Sam, because he's like the uncle role.
Yeah,
he's already kind of like how Sully is, you know.
You could definitely do that, especially because Sam is the less responsible one of the two. So he would totally go on an adventure with his niece and like watch her save his ass a bunch of times because he's a bit older now, type of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of directions that they could still take the Uncharted series, because you know with Lost Legacy you've got Chloe, who is like, she's my jam. I always play as Chloe and like the co-op and everything.
And co-op and stuff like that. Yeah, you've always been a Chloe fan.
Yeah.
Shame you have to sit on something that pretty.
Right.
That's a great line from the second game.
It's good stuff. So you got like Chloe and Nadine, and like, you know, towards the end of that you got Sam, who comes in and he's helping out, and I don't think Sully's really around, but it's still like there's a lot of characters that still get a lot of love, and like fans like us really still enjoy playing as. So even if this is the end for Nate, like, I mean, you could play one as Sam and Sully, because I think they, at the end of Uncharted 4, they're like walking off together and they're kind of being buddies.
Yeah, they are. And I wouldn't mind, I think specifically, I wouldn't mind if Naughty Dog handed the reins over to a different developer, but I think they would have to, if it's a Nathan Drake Uncharted game, it has to be Naughty Dog. No ifs, ands, or buts. Because he was their character.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I think it's like too risky to give it to a different developer.
I mean, they did with what is it? With Golden Abyss, Bend Studios, I think, developed
Sony
it.
Bend.
They did a serviceable job. It's not as good as the other games, but it's not a fault of the writing or anything like that. I just think the game, specifically, I think it was a fault of the format. I think the Vita is awesome, but those tiny ass joysticks are a little uncomfortable. I love the Vita too. I adore the Vita, but those tiny joysticks are a little uncomfortable.
So Sony Bend, or Bend Studio, they just came out with Days Gone.
Okay, so I've heard it's pretty good.
I think they got a lot of shit when it first came out because it was like pretty glitchy, but I think that's all been ironed out now, and like it's still kind of said to be actually one of the best games of 2019. So
maybe I'll have to try it out at some point. Before we kind of wrap up, though, there's something you wanted to say about crushing difficulty.
Oh yeah, okay. So
because we've talked about the story, we went in depth with the story. We've talked about the gameplay. We've talked about our experience leading up to it. So you mentioned before about crushing.
So in all the other games, there's kind of a linear progression of difficulty as you go from like normal, medium, hard, crushing, right? And it's, they're all hard, and Lazarevich fight was horrible, and on crushing, and all like the Djinns in Uncharted 3 were really horrible on crushing. So with Uncharted 4, it's kind of a mixed bag, because I got, I think, up to chapter 14 playing totally legit on crushing, and it was like a good challenge. And I got to the point where it's like you're in one of the big mansions, like around New Devon, and there's just like waves and waves of like super tough guys with like heavy machine guns and like snipers upstairs and all this stuff. And it was like, this is not possible. Like, I can't. I just can't. And there's like multiple other places that are like really, really difficult. So what they do, they allow you to have, like, if you played through the game before, and you can like enable cheats.
Yeah.
That you give yourself like a different gun, and you can give yourself like full ammo. right?
Is that what you did?
So that's what I had started doing for those type of areas where it's like you get the, I don't know, like whatever the Deagle or like the Wesson is in this game, and you just keep giving yourself ammo.
Because it's one-shot kills with those.
Right. Or like a couple shots for some of the big guys. And even with that, it was still difficult on those areas. And like for most of the game, I would still just go out with like whatever cool gun I had picked up. But you get to those spots and it's like, I'm not going to beat my head against this for like several hours.
Did it take away your achievement at all for beating it on crushing when you did that?
No. In fact, the way that most of the guides say on how to do both crushing and the really fast playthrough, and I think there's another one where it's like you have to get like over 80% hit accuracy, is basically just like play on easy, turn the auto aim like all the way up, grab the one-shot kill gun, and just run and shoot and run and shoot. And you get the thing done in under 5 hours, you get your hit accuracy thing, and it's like, these are the super easy trophies. So it's, when I say it's a mixed bag, I mean, it sucks that crushing is that hard, where I wish that I could do it without having to resort to that.
Yeah.
But also, it really takes away that achievement when it's like...
when you have to use a cheat in order to get it.
Right. And even if you don't, other people do. And they still got the platinum. So it's like, it just cheapens kind of the whole experience. So... yeah.
I would say, though, if the reward... the thing is, though, the reward... I wouldn't... I mean, I understand it does cheapen it, but also take a little bit of solace, I guess, because in order to get that, you have to beat the game at least once before. Mm-hmm. So that means they played through the game completely without any help, without any additions of it, or like helpful stuff. So they at least earned the full playthrough. They played it through the legit way at least once. Now, technically, that means they could have just played through it on easy, did that, and then just jumped up to crushing and did that.
Right.
Type of thing. But yeah, I got you though, because that is kind of for the people that bash their heads against the wall for hours trying to beat this on crushing. Like, did the completionist do Uncharted 4? I think you said you watched.
I watched him do some of the Ratchet and Clank games. I'm not sure if he did Uncharted 4.
Completionist, for those who don't know, is a YouTuber who completes games, and I don't mean just beats games. He completes them 100%. Everything, every collectible, every single thing that you can get in the game, he is going to get. His name's Gerard. I'm not a friend of the show. Would love him to be a friend of the show. He's an awesome dude. But he completes games, and some of them are intense.
It looks like he's done the first 3 games.
He has not done 4 yet.
I do not see it on here.
But anyway, that makes sense. That would frustrate me too, though, because someone like him who is going to play through all the way through to completion with no cheats, that would kind of cheapen it a bit. But I guess to wrap up this whole thing on Uncharted 4, because we've been going for a bit now, we're almost at 2 hours. Final thoughts on the game, and I guess on the Nathan Drake story. Actually, you know what? We shouldn't do final thoughts on the Nathan Drake story because we still have to do Golden Abyss, but. For the console ones, at least, final thought on Nathan Drake on the consoles. Like, what do you think of Uncharted 4?
I think you really kind of get out of it, is based on how you play it. And I think if you're neurotic like me, you might run into some issues. But if you just play it as it's supposed to be played, where it's like
me,
right, where it's like don't worry about the treasures, don't worry about exploring everything, just like organically just enjoy yourself and go through it. Uncharted 4 is amazing. And that's really how I tried to play it the first time. Sometimes I got a little stuck on areas like,
for
like,
trophy hunt,
like
for treasure hunting, I get you.
But yeah.
He's a treasure hunter after all.
Yeah. But like, cause like the first 3 games, like I powered through those, and then I would like play them like back to back. I'd play the first one and I'd be like, cool, I'm going to play it again. Find all the treasures. Same with the second one, same with the third one. That's how I played those. With 4, I just took my time. It took me like a week to get through it. And then I set it down. I didn't come back to it for, like, I don't know, a year and a half before I came back. But yeah, it's a really good game. And I think it's a really great send-off for Drake, where you get the full scope of his personality of like kind of a budding adventurer, and then
coming into his role as a partner, as a spouse, trying to settle down after this life,
right, and then settling into even like fatherhood. That's just like really
what
great.
I think. Yeah, I'm with you on that. It is such a phenomenally good game, and I think I don't know what Amy Hennig has done since in terms of writing for games. I'd have to really look into it, but like I said before, I'd be curious to see if she could pull off the same tone that this game did. And I honestly think this was a perfect send off, perfect, or as close to perfect as possible, a send off for the character and the cast of characters of this series, because you get to the end of the game and you see Drake talking to Cassie about all their previous adventures, and you get a little emotional just thinking about all, like, you feel like you're one of those adventurers. You genuinely feel like you were a part of this crew all along, even though you may be controlling Drake, but you always kind of view his relationships from the outside looking in, because you're not really up until this one, you didn't really have any interactivity with his relationships other than just running and murdering a lot of people and traversing across built like old dilapidated buildings. But this game really closed out his storyline as a treasure hunter, as an adventurer, and it's very bittersweet. But I definitely I think it was cool because Naughty Dog, ever since the Jack series in general, has seemed to know when to hang up their jack, or whatever the fuck that saying is. But you hang it up. They know when to hang it up for a character. And they move on without letting the formula get stale. I mean, look what happened to Crash Bandicoot after they left. The first Crash Bandicoot after Naughty Dog left was Wrath of Cortex, which was pretty much a straightforward Crash Bandicoot game. And then other ones after that just didn't quite achieve the same success. And that was the first non-Naughty Dog Crash Bandicoot, but nothing really achieved that success. Look at the first Jak and Daxter that was not done by Naughty Dog. It's called Lost Frontier. Bombed. I never personally played it, but I know a lot of people aren't fans of it. And then and even with how Jak and Daxter ended, Jak 3 has a really profound ending compared to the rest of the series. It's got a really good storyline to wrap everything up. And it seems they did the same thing with Uncharted, where they're like, this is going to be our send-off for this game. It's weird. They actually, no, they did Lost Legacy, but for the most part, Naughty Dog does 4 games per series. They do the main 3 in a racing game for the first 2. Crash 1, 2, 3, Crash Team Racing, Jak 1, 2, 3, Jak X Combat Racing. Then they did Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then technically, if you count Lost Legacy, I'm not counting Lost Legacy. Is that what it? Yeah, Lost Legacy. That's a 5th one, but it's not Nathan Drake.
It's not a numbered sequel.
It's not a numbered sequel, and it's not. It doesn't feature It doesn't feature the main character of the series. And I wouldn't have a problem if they expanded Uncharted's universe and did a whole bunch, kind of like what Ratchet and Clank has done, where it's still Ratchet and Clank, but they just kind of go off and they expand the universe with a whole lot of things. Now, granted, Ratchet and Clank is in every single game, but Uncharted is flexible enough, as they shown with Lost Legacy, that you can have characters outside of Nathan Drake that can support a game on their own. So it'd be really cool to see more games like Lost Legacy come to fruition.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with that, because obviously Lost Legacy was great, and they're working on The Last of Us Part 2.
I actually need to replay Last of Us, not only for our Naughty Dog series, but never played the DLC, and I've only ever beat that game once because it was just too heavy. It was so heavy, and I'm afraid to play Last of Us 2 because I heard it's even more heavy. Nervous about that.
Yeah, but they have those kind of 2 alternating teams, right? Where it's Uncharted 3 for Team 1, Team 2, The Last of Us. Team 1, Uncharted 4, and then I think Lost Legacy was supposed to be DLC.
There was some bleed over with 4 and Last of Us, though, because, like we said, Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann ended up doing that one. But go on.
So then Team 2, Last of Us Part 2. So then I wonder what the Uncharted team is working on right now. Are they doing another Uncharted game, or are they doing some sort of new IP?
That is a very good question. I actually wanted to see who designed, who was the lead director or designer of Lost Legacy, because was it Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann? Yeah. No, it was not. The directors of Uncharted Lost Legacy was Kurt Margiano and Sean Eskeg. I don't think I pronounced those names correctly. But yeah, so I'd be curious to see what they're doing, because, or did they consolidate the teams to do Last of Us Part 2? Last of Us Part 2 got pushed back, right? Was that originally going to be released in 2019?
That was supposed to be end of 2019, I think.
It got pushed back. That makes sense, because Lost Legacy came out in 2017. So if you're going with every 2 years, it would the next Naughty Dog game that's not Last of Us Part 2 theoretically should be coming out in either 2021 or 2022. Hopefully 21. I would love to see another Naughty Dog game in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, they could be doing a launch title for PS5.
That would make sense. Do you think Last of Us Part 2 is going to... When is that coming out?
It's like March, I think.
Okay, so it's not going to be a PS5 launch. I wouldn't be surprised if they ported it to the PS5.
Yeah.
If the PS5... I heard the PS5 is backwards compatible. Or the rumors is that it's going to be backwards compatible with everything.
I don't see how it couldn't be at this point.
Well, it has to be emulators. That's all it has. Like, that's the only way they could get it to work. They would have to have a PS3 emulator, because there's no way they're going to replicate the hardware on that.
Right. I more so mean that it has to at least be PS4 backwards compatible. So, like, anything that you are... I would hope that anything that you're releasing on PS4 now that could have some bleed over into PS5, you would be able to still play on the PS5 with, like, the better graphics. Kind of like if you get Horizon or God of War and you're playing it on a PS4 Pro versus a PS4, you're going to have better frame rates, better resolutions, even though it's the same game, just depending on what hardware you're using.
Yeah, makes sense. I wish I had a PS4 Pro. I couldn't conceive of forking up money to replace my existing PS4 just to upgrade it for another $400.
Yeah, I think honestly, probably like a year ago, I was considering it just because I
Didn't you get a PS4 Pro?
No, I still have a...
You have an original?
It's the like a year after launch one where it's not glossy anymore.
Okay.
It's just the full matte. But it's not a slim.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I had considered it just for God of War to be in at 60 FPS, because that's like one of those games that you want to play real fluid like that. But PS5 has always been just like right around the corner, and I would really kick myself if I bought a PS4 Pro and then PS5 comes out and I'd be like, well, I just wasted $300.
Because then you could have just gotten a PS5 at that point.
Right. And I think the assumption is that you can get a PS5 and it'll still do that same kind of like up-resing and frames per second stuff for the PS4 games.
But anyway, so I think that's a good place to leave off for Uncharted 4. We're going to be covering more Uncharted. There's still 2 Uncharted games left in this Naughty Dog series, as well as then there's Crash Bandicoot, and then there's also Jak and Daxter. So there's a lot more games still to come, but I'm trying to space them out so we're not just getting them all out of the way. I'm trying to do one every 2 or 3 or 4 episodes or so. And there may be something to talk about, coming later this year. So in any case, Tristan, thank you for joining me for this episode.
Always my pleasure.
As usual. Oh, actually, do you have anything you want to plug? Any social media you want to plug?
Nah.
Fair enough. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. If you want to email me, you can email me at stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, you can check out my Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Even just $1 a month will help grow the show, so it would mean a lot to me. Or if you want to just give a rating or review on whatever podcasting app you use, that also helps get the word out there and helps the show become more visible to those who would be interested in it. And, check out the network I'm a part of. I always feel like I forget to say it at the very end. I always do, but I always forget it. It's always the last thing on my mind, which I feel a little bad about. But check out the network. I'm part of the Podbeard Network. You can go to podbeardnetwork.com to check out everything there. And that should do it. So, Tristan, thank you.
Thank you.
And I will see you all next time.
Crazy.